Hey everybody, it's Hannah from Winsome Cottage Gardens, and it's been a while since my last video, so I thought, sorry, I've been outside all day, and I thought that I would share with you a little bit more about one of the things I've been working on that I haven't really filmed much. And before I do that, I have to share with you a little bit more about the name behind the channel, Winsome Cottage, which is actually a place. Winsome Cottage is our family cottage, which is now my parents' house. That we call Winsome Cottage. It is, you can kind of see behind me, in a beautiful forested area, northern Michigan. They are a zone 6, even though they're further north than where I live in West Michigan. They're closer to the Lake Michigan. They're not on the lake, but they're closer. And they have a much more temperate climate because they're within about a mile, 2 miles of the water. So my parents recently moved up here in the last year, and they've been doing some of the projects that they've wanted to do for a while, and I have been along for the ride. And today and tomorrow, today's actually the evening, so I'm going to be doing the bulk of this tomorrow. We're starting to plant one of the new areas we created that I wanted to share with you. So this is actually, as you drive up to the cottage, the space. This right here is their garage that they put in a year or two ago. And you can excuse this is actually being blacktopped in the next little bit. It's kind of a no man's land up here that they've never really landscaped as much outside of some trees and some larger things. I'm going to actually show you the backyard because it's my favorite. And this year they've just been focusing on problem areas like this is actually hiding all these grasses we did earlier this summer, and it was a pain in the butt, let me tell you, but it's actually hiding some facilities. They're working on screening out some of the neighbors' propane tanks and figuring out where like some trailers and whatnot are going. But one of the recent beds we put in is this front bed that I'm walking towards, which you can see my dad is really good at building some rock walls. So he and I helped him place things. He did all the actual work. And we created this bed on the back of the garage. This garage is north facing and gets a very minimal light. This is a rhodie we just planted. It'll do well. It probably gets 5-ish hours because it gets a nice shot of sun. The sun rises over there and it gets a nice shot of sun. And then the sunset's actually right behind their house, but it gets another shot right in the evening. But for the most part, other than these perennial chives, this is going to be fairly deep shade. We also, as you can tell by the lovely fence that's around many of the things here, this is our plant hoard. I feel like everyone has them. They're plants that we've either taken out from places and need to move around, or we've bought without a clear idea of where it's going and just haven't really found it yet, or their place isn't ready. So hopefully this will be mostly gone. But as I said, you can probably tell by the fencing that we have around many things. Let me flip the camera. So that right there behind me, that is the Manistee National Forest. And we get a lot of deer traffic. We have tried sprays, we've tried motion sensor water things. It doesn't really work. My parents are still trying to figure out a lot of stuff, but what it's meant is we've actually fenced in many a thing in an effort to have a beautiful yard. And so for a lot of the more established things, or as they're establishing, if they're not deer resistant, or as they've just been planted, we will put a big cage around them to give them a fighting shot. If I flip around here, you'll notice these are actually planted. All of these varieties that we have in this front are supposed to be highly deer resistant, whether that's because they are poisonous or whatnot. This is the one exception. It's actually a 9-bark that came out of my yard. I think I referenced it in an earlier video. It is where It came out of a space that new 9 bark that we planted and worked on the water from came from. It's not doing so well, but we're gonna get it in the ground and cut it back and give it a chance to kind of regrow next year. And if it lives, it lives. And if it dies, it gave a good fight. But so this is the bed that I am working on over the next day or two. We just finished building it up with the rocks. My dad filled it this week, so a lot of this stuff is gonna get planted. Now, the project is gonna be a 2-part video. This trellis, let me see if I can step back real quick. So I can't actually get a really good shot because as there's some construction-y things happening, we've got a lot just right here, which is not gonna stay right here. But you can see that this north side of the garage is actually quite a large expanse of siding that my parents really wanted something to break it up. So we got this 3-arch, it's really 2 arches and a connecting piece from Gardener Supply Company. I'll look up the name and add it below. Which were, like I said earlier, that is deep shade, does not get much, if any, sun up that close to the house. We're mostly using that for structure. We're gonna see if we can train some ivy onto it, and we're gonna take a risk and see, you know, we're gonna plant a clematis, see if the deer will leave it alone, see if it'll flower, and if not, it'll give a nice green break to help provide just something to break up that big wall. But that is not actually in yet, it's just leaning against it. Because we're still trying to figure out, because we're not using it quite as gardeners intended, having it up against a structure. So we are needing to figure, and we also want to raise it about 18 inches. So we're still getting like T-posts and stuff like that in place so we can get it there. And because of that, I've got some items placed around it, but I will not be planting them. I'm going to be focusing on that. And this isn't even really going to be planted except maybe right along the edges, just so that we have enough ample space to work. I suspect it'll be up in the next week or 2, and I'll do another part 2 video. Then I'm going to start getting some of these things in the ground. And at that time I will give some more variety information. A lot of these are part shade to full shade. They're supposed to be deer resistant, and we'll just document this and see how it actually goes. Yeah, in the next year or 2, but I'm hopeful that it'll provide a nice like green space that we don't have to fence everything up like we do in other areas of the yard. Which actually, let me walk down to the bottom of the yard really quickly, and I will show you just from the water what it looks like. I started to walk, but I wanted to show you. This is a part 2 of the project. So my dad built this wall because this ground was, you can see it's kind of close to our neighbors, but he's just finishing building this little retaining thing. So this is a path that the 4-wheeler can go, taking us from the front of the property to the back. This is probably going to be filled in the next little bit. It also doesn't get much sun, so we're going to add some ferns there as well. But that's, Dad is working on building everything, and there's going to be another little section here, and he's working on some other bits and bobs here that I'm sure we'll show you more. But this actually, as I walk down, you can see the protection we've had many people compare it to you know, like a prison camp for our plants, but really it's done out of love. I don't know if you can see this. There's actually a lot of weed that just came on. This is Hamlin Lake that we are on right now. It's probably about 7:30. We've got like another hour of light, and it's just glorious because it's not so hot. It's just been so freaking hot. But here we are. We are on the north side of the upper Hamlin Lake, which runs kitty corner. Well, it runs parallel to Lake Michigan. Lower Hamlin does, which is through the Narrows over there. So we get all of the wind, Lower Hamlin, which is not this lake, it's the one through the Narrows, is the larger part of the lake. It is separated from Lake Michigan by sand dune. It's technically connected, but you can't drive a boat through it. You could take some inner tubes down if you wanted. But it mirrors Lake Michigan, so it gets the wind and everything like that. It gets very wavy. Upper Hamlin's a little bit more protected because it's perpendicular to the lake, but it means that this weed behind me, we are on the point right through the Narrows, that all the wind just kind of pushes it right towards us. So that is something that I say we, my dad and my brother are gonna have to clear out, because it's kind of gross. This is the time of year that you just gotta start pulling it all out. But I've walked down to the bottom of the yard. I might as well take you the rest of the way. This is actually newer grass that we're trying to establish. They had to put in a seawall because even though we're not on Lake Michigan, which means we don't have quite the same water erosion issues, because we are on this point opposite the Narrows. I wonder if I walk on the dock if I can show you more. Because we're on this point opposite the Narrows, we get a lot of wave action, as you can tell by the fact that all the weed this is the time of year that all the weed just kind of lives here. And they lost about 10 feet of yard in the last 10 years. And so they had to put up a seawall to stop erosion. You can kind of see, this is the smaller part of the lake that they're on. It's a beautiful day right now. But let me show you the cottage. So in the boathouse and the sailboat, they put this beautiful seawall in, or they did, wonderful people did. And it meant that there was a lot of reseeding that had to be done. And it's actually allowed us a space right over here, which we're going to be spending time later this year, because they're putting in a fenced-in vegetable garden, which is very exciting. But here is the rest of the cottage. It's very pretty. They actually built it, I think about 11 years ago. And these beds, they didn't build, my dad built like these things, but when they bought it, they got a professional to do these big retaining walls that have created kind of swales. Yeah, and I'm sure as time goes on, we will share more about the different beds and whatnot. They're actually in the process of redefining some of the garden beds now that they've lived with them for 10 years. Some of the things have gotten very established because they planted all this stuff here, and they're rethinking some things, replanning some things, and now that they live here, they're doing some projects that they have put off for a while. So I'm sure we'll document those along the way. Coming up to film something, and look at this bastard. I shouldn't say that. Look at this mean person. I'm gonna get my dad to come kill him. We've been battling him on these plants. So rude. Got distracted by tomato hornworms. So tomorrow I'm going to plant some of those, which I'll take you on and show you what I planted, and we'll end it up there and talk varieties a little bit more. Fun. Hey guys, it's Editing Hannah. Actually, I'm going to end this video here. Thank you so much for joining me. I have a couple new videos already filmed that I'll be working to get up in the next couple weeks, where we go through that bed that I showed you, adding the plants in, finalizing choices, as well as a couple other areas at the cottage, and a much needed update of my vegetable garden. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again next time.